Hey, welcome back to the Wild Review. This is where we look at movies, look at some of the facts behind them, some of the financials, and ultimately try to decide, was this movie good or not? This week we're looking at Constantine. Constantine came out in 2005 and was directed by Francis Lawrence. This guy also directed I Am Legend and the 3 out of 4 Hunger Games movies that came out later. Pretty good resume, I, and it shows in this movie. It's also starring Keanu Reeves, Rachel Weisz, Shia LaBeouf, and Jimon Honsu. Like looking back at that, that's a pretty awesome cast. In 2005, it wasn't as impressive. Keanu Reeves was pretty well known name. Rachel Weisz had come off The Mummy and such things, so she was pretty hot. But Shia LaBeouf, this is only his second movie. He hadn't done too much before this, and Jimon Honsu was also just starting to get his name really out there. So this movie aged pretty well in that regard. The budget for this movie when it was $75 million. Compared to last week's movie, we looked at Batman Forever. The budget for that was $100 million, and that came out 8 years before this. So while the budget was smaller, the returns were as well. The worldwide box office for this was $221 million. Pretty impressive, but it didn't blow anything away. The reviews for this from critics were pretty abysmal. It sits at an overall score of 48% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm pretty much here to talk about why that score is ultimately wrong. I think that's too low, and we'll kind of go over that throughout the course of this review. So the question is, what did the critics not like about this movie? Some critics didn't like the acting. Tasha Robinson said anyone but Reeves would have made a better John Constantine. Ouch. Some people didn't like the movie itself and said it was a ponderous bore. Yikes. Meanwhile, one reviewer said, this is nonsense, of course, and the trappings surround it only typify the absolute worst of comic books. Yikes. That's a pretty rough review. So they didn't like the movie itself, and they didn't like the lead actor. I'll admit it, I think Keanu Reeves isn't amazing in this role. I don't think he blows it out of the water.
I need some help, Father.
I think these reviewers didn't know John Constantine as a character. And, that's sometimes it's hard to separate the art from its original work, so the movie should stand on its own. You shouldn't have to read the comic books. But you shouldn't necessarily say acting is bad if the character isn't lively and exciting and hilarious or something,
That's not the way this works.
If a character is stoic, you kind of have to accept that that's the way the character is. When I saw this movie, I hadn't read Hellblazer. I hadn't read any other Constantine comic books. This was my only source of information. And having read the comic books now, I'll say, hey, the movie works. But I liked the movie when it came out. I thought Constantine was a stoic character. He's very much a film noir detective in the city of LA. It mirrors the same kind of tone, and that's the tone this movie tries to take. So I'm not quite sure what the critics were expecting when they went to go see Constantine. I guess they were waiting for more of a Spider-Man-esque hero. I guess they wanted more flair, some more jaunty comedy. I don't know. But what I can tell you about this movie is it's shot beautifully. The acting is very good, if not great, depending on which role you're looking at. I can tell you that it has its funny moments, both in the filming, in the way it's filmed, and from the characters. I don't see what people expected of this movie. Right off the bat, the cinematography is stunning, and it stays stunning throughout the whole movie. When I first saw this in theaters, I didn't quite grasp that. I just know I enjoyed the movie. And I've seen it several times since. And watching it again, this time I only just realized how much I really love every scene in this movie. And it's because I was like, I'm looking for what I want to clip for this review. I wanted to clip every scene. I wanted to clip the intro scene where Manuel gets smashed by a car like the car is hitting a brick wall. I wanted to clip the scene where Constantine is pulling on the mirror to launch the demon outside the window. I have screenshots of the bowl when outside of Constantine's apartment. I love all the scenes at the beginning of the movie where they introduce Isabella and Angela to us, the viewer, and they're mirroring each other in all of their actions. All of these scenes are just handled so lovingly and with such intentional camera work and direction that it blows my mind that somebody could watch this movie and be like, oh, it's a bore. I think even if the story was boring, the cinematography itself carries the movie so well. So it's shocking to me that anyone would not be interested in this movie. Some of the criticism of this movie also revolves around the hellscapes when John Constantine goes down to hell to retrieve Isabella's soul, or evidence of Isabella's soul being in hell. And those are also awesome and incredible shots. They're actually based off of footage of nuclear tests and the aftermath left after the explosion. And you can see that in these hellscapes. They're just sweeping vast wastelands, and the dust and everything's crumbling. It's absolutely stunning. I think it's one of the cooler depictions of hell that's been out there, because it kind of steps away from this fiery doom and it's more of a crumbled existence. Also, what I think one of the highlights of this movie is the introduction of Chaz Kramer as a character, who I don't think is original to the comic books, but correct me if I'm wrong. He's introduced for this movie, and he's played by Shia LaBeouf. And this is before Shia LaBeouf entered his weird movie-making phase. This was when he was just getting his start in the industry. He has previously starred in iRobot and all of his Disney Channel stuff, and this is one of his first breakthrough roles into more major acting. He plays Chaz Kramer, who's John Constantine's apprentice, and he manages to balance the comedy well with how serious this movie takes itself, which is not very serious at times. But he injects comedy to balance off John Constantine's deadpan seriousness. It's a very good balance, and I really like Shia LaBeouf in this movie. I think Chaz Kramer is a fantastic character, and he's so relatable and likable throughout the whole movie. Even though you don't get a lot of scenes with him, maybe a total of maybe 5 or 6 scenes, it does such a good job of really bringing this character to life in such a small amount of time. And he's very funny. Like the scene where John and him are in the cab, and Shia LaBeouf is asking him when he's going to start to be able to do more serious apprentice stuff.
Alright, question. How much longer do I have to be your slave, John?
You're not my slave, Chaz. You're my very appreciated apprentice. Like Tonto or Robin. Or that skinny fella with the fat friend.
Right, so then why don't I apprentice something besides driving then, John? John? John! I love our little talk, John!
I love that scene. That scene is so funny. But it's just the way that this movie plays with comedy. Is it has direct comedy, but it also has indirect comedy where it shows you that it's not taking itself 100% seriously. It's a little silly and a little goofy. Like the scene where Constantine is about to transcend to hell to go look for Isabella's soul, and Angela's about to leave him to let him do that. And she's closing the door, and he's sitting there in his full suit with his feet in a pan, and he's holding a cat on his lap. And there's just a quick camera cut of that scene, and it's comical. It's comical because like this is how you go to hell. Like it's so well done. This movie has such strong direction, such strong cinematography that it blows me away. As an overall, the acting in this movie is good. I think Rachel Weisz is fantastic. She plays Angela, but also her twin sister Isabella. And she plays both roles really well, even though the characters are pretty similar. And you don't get to see a lot of Isabella on screen, so really she mostly just plays Angela. But her chemistry with Keanu Reeves on screen is fantastic.
I really need to speak with him. It's very important.
First come, first served.
Oh. So you're rude no matter where you are.
There's a lot of hints at a romantic intimacy between the two, but it's never fully followed through with the movie. The director did not want to make this a romance. He wanted to stay in this film noir style, and so all of the romantic stuff kind of gets kicked into a more comedy section.
So do I have to take the rest of my clothes off, or can I leave them on? John?
I'm thinking.
John?
Oh, it's fine.
And I think it's fantastic. It's very funny. But like not laugh out loud funny. It's kind of like cute funny, and it keeps this movie from taking itself too seriously, which is again fantastic. And she plays it off incredibly well. Like there's there's this tone of gentleness to her when she's around Constantine because she realizes that he's suffering, but she's also this detective who's seen terrible things and knows the harshness of the world, who's being introduced to a whole new level of harshness through this hellscape, and realizing that angels and demons are real and in this world around her. And I think she does such a good job of keeping this character grounded and also being kind of a badass. She learns that demons are real, and she's like, all right, I can have powers that can potentially help me? Yeah, let's unleash my powers. Send me to hell. She wants to fight demons side by side with Constantine. She's a great character. Fantastic. She really has her own energy in this movie, and I love it. Critics didn't like Constantine as a character in this movie because of the way he was played by Keanu Reeves. I get it. I can see people not loving the character. I don't understand why you'd hate this character. I think he does bring a lot of depth to it. It's a little one note, but it's not throughout the whole movie. He has these moments where he's a little funny, and he's a little cute with Angela, and he brings out some like real emotion when it comes to Chaz Kramer, his apprentice for a long time now. But his whole character is resigned to the fact that he's dying and he's going to hell, and there's everything he's tried to do about it has been pretty much wasted effort.
I've been seeing some unusual soul traffic lately. You might consider giving me an extension. Could do your side some good these days.
He's still trying to buy your way into heaven?
And so he's a very angry character who's just kind of just trudging through life. And I don't know. I think that the critics kind of were expecting something different. They didn't get what they expected, and now they're upset about it. I that's the only way I can explain it, because this character, like the character, like I said, it can be a little one note, but it fits the motivations of what's happening around him. So I don't understand the hate. Tilda Swinton plays the angel Gabriel, and it does a fantastic job. Because they try to keep angels, or this angel, kind of gender neutral. Gabriel is played by a woman. The name Gabriel tends to be more masculine, and so, but she kind of plays this great gender fluid character, as it doesn't matter, and that Gabriel is just Gabriel, and I love that about the character. And her role, anytime she's acting on screen, she just acts circles around anyone else around her. It's like really impressive, the caliber of acting she brings to the screen for this movie. The whole scene with her and Constantine in the library, when they go back and forth over why John can't buy his way into hell by killing demons, is fantastic. And then her scene at the end of the movie, where after she's been turned human for defying God,
You could have shot me, John. You chose a higher path. Look how well you're doing.
that scene's hilarious. It's so funny because she's literally just had her plans foiled, and she wants Constantine to kill her so she's still a pure soul, she can go to heaven, but he doesn't do it. And so she kind of wishes him well because she's an angel, and she doesn't, like, nothing she's done has been malicious necessarily. It's such a good job. I'm a huge fan of Tilda Swinton in this movie, and it's just fantastic. And the other person really worth noting is Peter Stormaire. And while he's not starring in this movie, he's probably my favorite character overall. He plays Lucifer in one of the classiest, most threatening and like leering feeling Lucifers or the devils I've ever seen on screen. The only time you see him is at the end of the movie, and he comes out from hell to collect John Constantine's soul, and he's wearing this white linen suit, and his feet are covered in tar, and you instantly know who it is without any introduction, because he has this kind of aura and presence around him. The cool thing about the suit is that was his idea. Peter Stormaire came to the director and said, "This is how the devil should look." And originally the producers had him in like leather pants and a dog collar with spikes and tattoos and some like really weird, like what some old person thinks young people dress like outfit. I don't know, but this is such a better take on it, and because his personalities bring so much gravitas to the role, it's probably my favorite rendition of the devil on screen I've ever seen, including that show Lucifer. Hands down, Peter Stormare takes the cake. Just amazing. So, Wild, everything you're saying about this movie sounds like a 10 out of 10 movie. Not quite. There is some bad stuff to it. First of all, the movie opens with a cold open. Not a big fan of that. Cold opens, in general, I prefer that movies would tell their story through the actors, through some of the interactions with characters, like let us learn the world in different ways. I don't like cold opens necessarily. They're not always terrible, but this one especially doesn't do much, because it kind of tells you what the Spear of Destiny is, which is this relic that's the driving force of the entire movie. So the cold open is used to introduce the Spear of Destiny. Then the Spear of Destiny itself doesn't do anything throughout the whole movie. It's not a part. It's introduced in the beginning, and then at the very end it's a plot device to bring the devil's son into the world. But he really doesn't have anything other impetus. So, did we really need to know what the Spear of Destiny was? Not really. Did the Spear of Destiny need to have multiple scenes throughout the movie? Not really. They're cool scenes. They're really cool scenes, because the cinematography, once again, just so good. But it doesn't really do anything. Like I think they could have cut some of that stuff out, and it would have made for a better movie. It could have just been the artifact. Heck, there's a scene where Constantine is talking to Angela about the Spear of Destiny, and she goes, "I know what the Spear of Destiny is. I went to Catholic school." They could have said, Constantine could have just started telling us what the Spear of Destiny was in that scene, and it would have been fine. And you could have cut some of the earlier stuff out of it, and just known it's this powerful object moving our way. Cut the cold open, man. No one wants it. It does nothing, and you could have given us that information later. So, I'm not a huge fan of that, in general. Like I said, Keanu's acting can be a little one note. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I can see how some people may not love that about the movie. One of the other things about the movie that's not fantastic is the story can be a bit winding, and it's not necessarily the most driven story. So it's demons are kind of breaking into Earth more. How and why? Why did Angela's sister commit suicide? We don't really care about Isabella that much, and we're not really drawn to Angela more until later on in the movie. So it's not a super driving story. A lot of it's kind of the mystery behind what's happening that's driving the force, and I can see that as not being the most interesting thing that's happening. I can get that. I wouldn't say that's a hot take. It makes sense that the story could have been told a little better. It could have been a little more interesting. But I think the story does a good job of not taking away from the character development and letting the characters kind of breathe. So there's not amazing storytelling. It could be better. It could be worse. I think a lot of the movie is actually very character driven, and that makes it better in that sense, but the story does suffer as a result. Overall, I don't think there's a lot of outright bad stuff in this movie. The plot is a little winding, the acting can be a little one note, and the Spear of Destiny is kind of this thing that's not that important. But overall, I think this movie is actually quite good. So, we've come to the point in the review where we kind of ask ourselves, is this movie good or is it not? based on the cinematography, based on the acting, based on the cast, and all these things, I'd say this movie is good. I think objectively this movie can be looked at and say good. I think a lot of that rides on the cinematography and the directing. It's more than competent. It's skillful. It's very, very beautifully done. The acting is really good. The dialogue between the characters is rich, and it's complex. It brings this complex world to us very quickly and aggressively, but we learn a lot of it through this, and the rules and all these things. So I think it's a very, very cool movie. Yeah, and so it's objectively good, but do I like it? Yes, I love Constantine. Constantine's an excellent movie, in my mind. I really, really enjoy Keanu Reeves in it. I'm a huge, huge Chaz Kramer fan, especially the post-credit scene. Fantastic. I, from beginning to the end, I will watch this movie pretty much any day. And I think a lot of comic book fans feel that way. So this is one of the instances where the critics are really wrong. Oh, hey, didn't see you guys there. Thanks for tuning in and watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like, subscribe button, and comment below. You can also ring that bell so you're notified anytime I upload new videos. If you have some more time, since you're really busy right now on YouTube, you can also watch more videos of my content. Yeah. It's a good time. We review movies from all the time. All the decades. 20s, 30s, modern. Stay tuned.